Good morning, everyone. Some of my favorite people in this room today. I'm Laura Reth, current Vice President of Strategic Branding for Axiom and Axiom Connected. In honor of Women's History Month and International Women's Day, we gathered this talented group of women together from different areas in our organization. Accounting, sales, product, marketing. We really wanted to take a personal look into how each of us arrived here today to occupy these seats in corporate America, the challenges, the successes, and to publicly voice our views on equality, how far we have come, what work still needs to be done as it relates to our careers, raising our children, and how we are supporting each other. I want to start by letting each panelist introduce themselves and their role within our organization. I'm going to go ahead, Kerri.
My name is Kerri Diberardinis, and I am a strategic account and project manager.
My name is Melissa Fortae, and I am a sales support manager. I have about 16 years in the auto industry in some form, and I'm excited to talk about this topic because we have a lot to be proud of, and I'm excited for the Women's Day celebration because we're given the opportunity to be who we are. So.
My name is Tanya Courtney. I'm the Senior Product and Compliance Manager. I have been in the auto industry in this type of role for approximately 20 years. So I've seen a lot, both in product and compliance. And I just want to say that I'm really excited to work with these group of strong women here and excited to talk about this today.
My name is Becca Hogenmiller. I am Software Product Manager. Been in the automotive industry for a long 5 years now. I've had a lot of great experiences and seen the journey that has been the growth from inception to where I am today, and excited to be part of a group of women that are supportive, professional, and always keep things real when we need it. So thanks for having us here.
So Kerri, I know that you're not a newbie to this industry. So do you want to give us a little background on how long you've been in automotive?
So my family has been married to the automotive industry for about 25 years. Myself, I was recruited about 12 years into automotive. I've held positions in finance for about 8 years, and then I did the sales desk for 4 years. And I also work with some dealer groups, doing various things to help them, just with process improvement. So from my experience coming from the corporate world and then to go into family-owned dealerships that was very male-dominated, there were some challenges. I remember one of the very first times that I was on a closing shift and the sales manager had a fit because he had to stay with me until I was done with my customer. Because normally it was a male finance manager that would close the store and have keys, and they weren't comfortable with leaving a female in the building by herself. So now 2 people had to stay late till we were done doing the deal. So I made sure, as time went on to let them know, that I was still there. And, you just went through all these challenges. I remember being told, when I got back from training after going to, F&I training school, and I knew it was a big expense for the dealership, and I was in finance for maybe 2 months at that point, and the comment of, hey, don't get pregnant, just so you know, was thrown out there. So I've been around a lot of being a woman in the sales department. I think it's a lot different. I think in most dealerships there are women that work in the dealerships, but predominantly it's in accounting, or you might be the comptroller, or maybe you're working in the back office and service. But as far as on the sales floor or being a sales manager or finance manager, you're few and far between. So I think that you have to have really tough skin. I don't think that you have to put up with being treated unfairly, but I think that, you can't take everything and be completely overly sensitive either. I don't think you'll ever get very far in the dealership if that's the way that you are. But I think over time, I had a great experience. I was treated really well, but there would be those comments from here or there, and you just had to learn to kind of let it go over your shoulder. I worked a lot of hours for a lot of years. During that whole time, I ended up having a child finally a few years later. So I had 2 children, and probably my best advice to myself, to the younger version of me, would be to realize sooner than later that you can't do everything. And I think hiring people to help me or to ask for help from other people was something that I wasn't initially very comfortable with. But once I did, I felt like the stress and the pressure was lifted.
I think you made a good new word, stressor. I think we can all relate to that.
And that's stressor.
I think that's a good point too, that we all, myself included, tend to take things on at work and at home where you don't want it. It's hard to give it to somebody else. You feel like, no, it's my responsibility. I need to take care of that. Where really, I think delegating makes it much easier to get everything done in your day, because you can't do everything. But we all want to.
And when you don't, you feel like you failed, whether it be your boss, your coworker, or even more importantly, your family, your kids, your husband. I feel like when you try to take it all on, and you're always going to fail at something or miss something, and then that starts to define you, whether it be from failing at work and then you feel like you're failing at home, or vice versa. So I think it's very important, to your point, to realize it's okay to ask for help. And as long as it's getting done, it doesn't really matter. It's a team effort. So I think that's a very good point.
Yeah. And I think as an employer, not even so much as an employee, but as an employer, you have to care about your employees enough to realize that there are going to be just highs and lows in people's lives. And so many times, like, I've seen people just have lows for quite a while, but if you kind of stuck through it and tried to help those employees, and it maybe wasn't necessarily you, but maybe it was another group of employees, but if everybody surrounded those employees and helped them, they were the most loyal employees down the road. And I think that a lot of times, you have to be there for people, and you have to care about them as a family, just like they would be, but not to take an advantage either. It has to be from one to the other.
So I think we're talking a lot about, this juggling act that all of us have had to do or continuously do over time. And I think for me, it's just, a matter of, having that choice. Sometimes you think, oh, okay, I have the choice. Either I can be, home with my kids or work. And sometimes that looks, people look at that like a luxury. But I think just having that choice is such a difficult choice, no matter where you are in your career, to have to make that, to be forced to choose. I mean, it's not even, and for a lot of people, it's not even a choice. They have to, leave their kids every day and go to work. And sometimes it's not just one job. Sometimes it's two jobs, and trying to make it all work. And I don't think that our male counterparts, at least the large majority of them, embrace that we even have to make that choice every day. It's like, for them, they get up, they're like, no, I have to go to work. This is what I do.
Right.
And I find that just, like, that burden sometimes is really, really heavy to bear, at one point it's like, yes, I just got kudos on some great, I don't know, ad campaign that we just launched. And then I go home and I get a letter home from my kid's teacher, like, not doing well in math or whatever. So, I mean, it's always this yin and yang, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like, if I could just get all of my ships sailing in the same direction,
they never will.
Yeah, it won't.
No, that's completely true. You'll have a great day at work where you think, oh my gosh, we got through so much today. We got this account, we got, all of these great things that happened at work. And then you go home to, the other half of your life, and, the kids are eating cereal for dinner because that's as good as it was going to be that night. And, the house is a mess, and you get the email from the teacher that your kid, painted the room with whatever, just causing chaos. And then on the flip side, you have those weekends where you're like, oh my gosh, my family's the greatest thing in the world, and I wish I could be home with them always. And then you get to work on Monday and everything explodes, and you're like, why is this happening? So it goes both ways. They never go in the same direction. And that, it's an emotional roller coaster. You feel obligated to do the right thing and be successful in all aspects of your life. And some days you are, and some days you're not. And, you just have to prioritize and decide what's really important. And that's harder to do when you like your family and you like your job. So I think we all struggle with that. Those emails from the teachers are really what do it, though.
I think you brought up a good point, and I haven't thought about it like that before. Like historically, the man's role was to get up and go to work and take care of their family. And when they're doing that, that's their pride, and they're doing their job. And as a mom, our role was always to take care of the house and the kids and the husband. And so then that's our pride. And when we do it well, that's where we get our pride. And now that we have so many more working women in the industry, those roles really didn't change to where they combined, that the man was also responsible for the house and the kids. And so we're trying to do 2 full-time jobs, and you just can't. There really isn't just enough time in the day. And as I mentioned to some people before yesterday, you feel like you're almost making a choice. Am I going to be a good mom today, or am I going to be a good employee? And then when you choose one over the other, that's where it tends to become really unbalanced. So I think it's something very important to find that balance so that you feel successful in both roles and not feel like you're failing one or the other.
But I think like as your kids start to get older, like my daughter was big into gymnastics, probably so much so because of the fact that I worked so many hours that it was a great indoor sport because we lived in a hot climate, and she could spend a lot of hours doing gymnastics. So my daughter truly wasn't like sitting home with a babysitter wondering why I was at work, and we always felt like we were in a better financial position than I was when I grew up. So we always felt like, this kid, and I think a lot of kids today pretty much get everything that they need, in general. So I always wanted her to be a hard worker, to understand that, you have to be part of a team. You have to go out there and support teammates. So I felt like gymnastics taught her a lot of those lessons. But I know like as she got older and I talked about, switching positions or switching careers, she would get very like nervous or very upset because she was proud of like what we did for a living. She was part, like my whole family as far as what stores we were at or what positions we were doing. So I think that as the kids get older and as you're watching your kids' childhood kind of disappear, you're like, wow, I only have 3 more years with them. I only have 4 more years with them before they're off to college, before they're driving. So you kind of like set this like internal time limit, but I think you're setting this amazing example for your kids. But on the same respect, you're also as a mom, like just, it feels like an hourglass tipping over.
And I can completely identify that. And I think that, we always talk about leading by example and actions speak louder than words. And I think that one of the biggest ways that we can keep this momentum moving forward in the future and, prepare the future for our girls is to be those strong role models in their life. And you don't even really realize that, okay, we see it as this huge juggling act, but to our kids, like our moms are superheroes, like that are making it all happen. Like they're getting up and they're getting to work and they're doing all these amazing things at work. And then they're coming home. And even if it is cereal for dinner, like it doesn't matter because my mom is trying to provide the best way of life for me. And I think that, kids really, especially little girls, are so impressionable. And you don't even realize that, what kind of impression you are leaving, and not even just like our own children, but children that we surround ourselves around every day. So, I think that, I guess my question is, what challenges or what ways do you guys envision us kind of leading that generation into like a positive future? Because I think that's such a, I don't know. We can't go back and change history, right? We always have to keep looking forward.
I think it's a combination of what Tanya and Kerri have spoke about, of having those traditional roles where it's reliant on the women to take care of everything at home and your kids, and how that hasn't quite shifted yet to balance with their counterpart. And then Kerri talking about how you have to accept help and rely on a team. And that applies to both at work and at home. And I think for the future, it's just important to surround yourself, and that phrase that it takes a village, to kind of build that team of people around you to help balance and juggle all those responsibilities, where it should be across the board equal, whether you're at work, you're at home, you're doing the laundry, taking your kids to school. I think for the future, in my opinion, being able to segment all of those responsibilities, and so it's not just reliant on the woman or the mom, is how that can hopefully shift going forward.
Yeah. I think we're really fortunate here at Axiom, just because I think we get so much support from our leadership here to have more of a flex schedule, to be able to, get work done, and be in the office so many days and not so many days if, you have something going on. I think I'm very fortunate because I have, a great support system and a great group of moms that I tell them all the time, like, you've also helped me raise my daughter. And, I've also helped, influence some of their kids, because sometimes their kids, they're in the car with me while I'm on conference calls, and I'll get off a call and they start asking me all these crazy questions about the call. But I think that it's good that they see that, you may be having to drive, you may have to multitask in life, because especially as women, we know, if you're busy doing one thing, you got to be doing another thing at the same time. So I think that probably futuristically, jobs are going to become more flexible. It's not going to be that normal Monday through Friday. I hope to see, I know retail automotive, we're seeing a lot of car groups that are going to like a 4-day work week versus a 6-day work week with only 6 days off a month, and I think that I've seen so many families just ruined with having to work, open to close 6 days a week. And I hope for those families, like as time goes on, for even the women behind those men, that things get better. In automotive, we're seeing how many women are driving the car buying experience. So I think having more women in automotive is possible, but I don't know how possible that's going to be until we truly change, the amount of working hours you're required to be in a dealership.
So if we had if we could make a wish list of sorts, I think that executive level management, they try to guess a lot of times, like, oh yeah, I'm going to give this benefit and everyone's going to think it's the best thing ever. But, as working professionals, and I mean like within reason, right? Everyone, we need 100 PTO days a year. Like that clearly isn't beneficial to anybody. But what are some things that you would like to see that would make your jobs easier? Or the flip side, how to better promote not flip side, but how to better promote your careers in a positive way, and also feeling like you're succeeding at home. It's not always going to be this perfect balance, but do you guys have some wish list items?
do these wish list items get granted? Or
Where's the genie?
Yes. I think, like Kerri mentioned, I think a 4-day work week, which is not always feasible, but things like that are so beneficial because it gives you that extra day for doctor's appointments, for all those appointments that you can't make on a Saturday or a Sunday, or, a field trip that your kid's going on that you want to be there for. Maybe you do want to spend a day with your spouse without the kids, in case you still like them. I think all of those things are important to show, to give you that balance. I think, just a flexibility where if you need to leave early, if you need to run here or there, all of those things are really useful. But I think that we have to be reasonable about it too, because business still has to happen. So,
to your point, this was, a funny, where we live, they do so many things during the middle of the day for the kids at school.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I would always feel horrible. I'm like, I can never go to anything. Like, why don't they know people work, Yep. So then I'd be working on the weekends, or every holiday weekend, there would be some tent sale, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, my kids are off from school on Monday. And when my kids would say, Mom, I can't believe you have to go to work again, I'd say, so do people that work in a hospital, and so do policemen, and so do people in the military. They miss their kids for 6 months at a time. So don't feel like you're any more or less than those people. You know what I mean? And I would literally have to like make myself like, I don't know.
Who are you trying to convince, you
Yeah.
or them? No, and we all do that.
And that's
We
terrible
all do that.
to do to a
It
little
is.
kid, you know, but that's what you do.
Mhm.
I think the
Yeah.
flexibility is the most important thing, because I've been fortunate in my career that companies I've worked for have been family oriented. And for the most part, I haven't had to have that guilt that I'm leaving early for a field trip, or that I have to choose to miss one of my children's events versus being at work. Now, it doesn't mean that I didn't feel guilty over it, but that was my own self. And I think that's one thing that I have to work on internally, which feeds off a lot of the points we've made, trying to not please everybody, not being able to do everything yourself. But I think the flexibility, and to Melissa's point, a 4-day work week, if you could have a weekday off where doctors are open and all of that type of thing, you could focus more on getting those type of things done on those days where you didn't have to miss work on a Wednesday to do a doctor's appointment. You could kind of do your schedule. I think it's also very hard. It also depends, obviously, on the industry you're in, because to your point, Kerri, there's some dealerships that work 7 days a week. Most are off on Sundays, but there's a lot of dealerships that are even open on Sundays.
Yeah, where I
and
come
so
from, we
because
work
of where
Sundays.
we are industry-wise too, we need to be here the most part so that we can support our dealerships and our agents, because they are working on those days. So I think it does can be crucial in what industry that you're in, but I think it's, very beneficial just to have the flexibility, whether it may be a 4-day work week or the hours you work or working from home, whatever that may be and looks like for you and your company. So,
And to build off that, I feel like to tie with flexibility from an employer standpoint is really to have trust in your employees, and they shouldn't have to justify why they need a day off or why they need to leave early. I've seen a lot of articles on LinkedIn lately that refer to, as long as you're getting the work done and I can trust that you work, I don't need to know why you need to leave. If you want to go see a movie in the middle of the day, that's fine. And I think that is really inspiring how in my experience in my career, if you can prove that you can get things done and you have the right employer, that they do trust in you and allow you to have that flexibility, they know that if you work from home, you're still going to work. So obviously that's going to depend on the person, and there's always going to be that bad apple that ruins it for everybody. But I think trust is a big piece in the future of allowing your employer or your employees to be able to have that balance, but while also still being beneficial to the company by getting things done.
I did read a similar article too, but it was a company that they did not give a set amount of PTO. You can take how much ever PTO you want. And what they found out is their employees, by the end of that period, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 years, overall, I want to say it was 25% less PTO than they did when they were given, say, a set 3 or 4 weeks. They were actually taking less because they didn't want to take advantage, and they loved that the company trusted in them to use that like they normally would. They weren't taking a week off every month just because, hey, I don't want to be at work. They were using it for their downtime that they needed so they could be a better mom, dad, employee, whatever that may be. So I thought that was a very interesting article. I think it would be very hard for companies to go to that, because I could see, to your point, Becca, that it could be very well abused if you have that bad apple. But when you get a group of good employees who are dedicated to you and what you're doing, which usually happens when you have a good management, good senior level in place, I could see where that would completely work.
Well, if an employee is happy, right, they're going to work harder. So,
Right.
If the upper level management believes in the employees and the employees are truly happy, they're going to just work hard, and they're not going to be taking days off. Where when you go ahead and you piss an employee off and they're like, oh, I still got 3 more PTO days that I'm going to lose by the end of next month, I'm just, they're going to burn you.
Mm-hmm.
So, that all has to do with happiness within these.
And I think too, a little bit, it's almost like, being in a management position, setting those PTO days. I want to see, the people on my team utilize those days. So that's like, no, please, 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 you take them. So it's almost like, I don't want to give you unlimited because I want to force you to take a vacation because, as a small, startup now, company that is flourishing, I know that, we've run very lean and, a lot of times have asked a lot of our employees. And so it's like, no, please use this time. You need to, I know we are going to be better as an organization for that, so
we're going to be better as an organization if you get out of here.
Right.
Get some downtime.
Yes.
And come back a new
you need
person.
more than just a fresh air walk around.
Come back refreshed.
Yeah, sometimes a walk around the building doesn't do it. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So I know we've talked a lot about the dynamic between men and women and in the workforce. I think, looking back, I can't like pinpoint one thing where I was like, oh, that was like a game changer for me as far as, maybe being looked over by a position. But what I did feel though is not a lot of what's the word? Support, I guess I would say, from other women. And I want to say that's probably because we have had to almost, claw our way to the top. And it's like, I need to, at all costs, and I don't care who you are, what you're going to do. Like, I need to be heard. I need to be seen. I want to, try to move up the ladder. So I can't be friends with you or maybe I'm going to stab you in the back or whatever the case is. But I've had more of those experiences, which I think is, can be directly related to this inequality issue over the years. But I don't want to necessarily talk about the negatives, but how can we support each other better as women, whether it's in this organization, as friends, in a community? I know, Kerri, we've had conversations before about like it takes a village and, maybe just kind of trying to remove that terrible judgment that I feel like we've all felt by other moms, other coworkers potentially, because I think that can almost be just as damaging as we try to become better mothers, better, people in our own careers.
Yeah, I think we always think of, women's sort of our rights and things like that and the equality as being, sometimes it's pegged as women against men, but it's really not. I think more than anything, we're kind of us against ourselves. I think any of us who are moms, especially, we've probably even had friends that maybe weren't as good of friends as we thought, who just get a little catty with things and judgmental, like you said. And we're all most of us are doing the best we can. There are always bad apples in every situation, but I think we're all trying to be good moms, be good employees, be good daughters, be good sisters, be good whatever it is. We're all doing the best we can and the best we know how with what's thrown at us. Some of us have more thrown at us at a time than others. Everybody comes from a different background. Some of us have the kind of childhood and upbringing where we have these role models, our moms, our grandmothers, that showed us this is who you should be. This is what being a good person really means. This is the way you should live your life. Some of us don't. There are people who never grew up with a mom, or, she was absent for whatever reason, or, they had hard times for whatever reason. But you have to recognize that everybody comes from a different background and not everybody knows what they're doing. None of us know what we're doing. We all just take it one day at a time. And I think the key is to recognize that and recognize that you don't know what somebody's going through. And you don't know what their background is and where they've been. And, maybe they have really difficult kids. You don't know. My point is we're all trying our best, and we need to remember that and not be judgmental and, pretend that we don't all make mistakes, because we do. And some of them are bigger than others, and you learn from those things. So
No, and I think in the workplace, I think it's important. You're always going to have people that you may not get along with the best, or that you're not truly fond of.
Do you want to name anybody, or?
I'm not talking about here. But to be friends and to be, don't come in head down, do your job, and not get to know the people that you work with. I think that's very important, because I think when you do that and they're running into a rough situation, you can have empathy towards that. And most of the time we can relate to it. And then when you can relate to it, you can have that conversation like, hey, Melissa, I've been through the same thing. And it's almost like your support group at work. And I just think it's really important to get to know the people that you're working with, so that you want to support them, you want to be friends with them, you want to help them. And I found that there's people that you may not always like the best, but if you do get to know them on a personal level, when something happens, you're empathetic towards that, and you want to step in and help them. I grew up, a part of the background, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and that's where I also struggle a lot, because I'll hear her say something like, oh, the kids had cereal again, you didn't cook again, and I had immediately guilt. I'm like, Mom, your job was to stay home and take care of us, so I didn't have that choice. I am working and I'm doing the best I can. So I think it's always important to realize, to your point, everybody's doing the best that they can, and you don't know what other people are going through. And most importantly, just be nice to people.
Yeah, it doesn't
be
cost
respectful. Give them compliments.
Kids love breakfast for dinner anyway. That's like their
absolutely.
favorite meal
They
of
totally
the entire week.
And
Like,
I
it's
could
you're
live
gonna
on
cook
cereal.
steak,
I'm like,
or
oh,
you're gonna
cereal
cook
seems to be a
cereal.
really
I'd much
common-
rather
I think I
have
might do that
cereal.
We haven't had Cheerios in a while. Let's go that route.
But even with that, then you're thinking, well, I could feed them a healthier cereal than a no sugar cereal.
Oh yeah, that's so true.
And
though,
then
right?
you run
you're
into
like,
everything.
And I think that makes it harder because, like you said, your mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my mom, for the most part, was too. And she never did things like that. We
Right,
never had
never.
cereal for
I
dinner,
know.
so we're sometimes harder on ourselves because of our experiences. Great childhood, but
yeah,
mom
I
never seemed to
remember
screw up.
one time very vividly. My mother has always had a career, and a big one. She was president of a printing company for 25 years, and she would throw us in the back of the car, and we'd go on a press check in the middle of the night, to not so nice neighborhoods. It was very interesting but educational all in the same time. But I remember, we kind of touched on this earlier. She couldn't be available during the day for Valentine's Day, Halloween parties, or whatever. And back when you could actually still bring food to school without ordering it through the cafeteria. She baked all these cupcakes for the whole class for Valentine's Day. She was like, here you go. I have like 22 cupcakes, send them to school. Well, when the kids unwrapped the cupcakes, they were burnt on the bottom. And all the kids were like, these are the worst cupcakes. These cupcakes were terrible. And I never said a word to my mom until years later when she accidentally burnt something. I mean, I was an adult. I maybe even had my own kids. And I was like, well, you remember that time, you sent cupcakes in for Valentine's Day and they were burnt on the bottom. I mean, I feel like all 25 years of hard work at a printing company just evaporated with that one statement. And I just felt so, and I realized I was teasing her at the moment, but I realize now what that does to a mom. When you're trying to make it all work, and then in reality, I wouldn't even say how many years ago that was, that, she was just basically my entire career was worth nothing because I burnt those cupcakes.
She's
that
been
day
hanging on to those cupcakes.
So yeah, and now I get it. I so get that, Mom, and I'm I still apologize to her. I should have never told you. I had no idea it would cut that deep.
I was lying about
I
it,
can't
Mom. That
even
really
tell
didn't
you,
happen.
Before, Amazon, I can't tell you how many trips I made to Walmart at midnight or 1:00 in the morning because I would get home from work at 10:30 at night, and there would be just a piece of paper saying, by the way, you have to bring 2 t-shirts for tie-dye day tomorrow. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So now I'm driving 40 minutes to go to a 24-hour Walmart because I was like, I'm not going to fail. I'm not going to be that mom that doesn't show up tomorrow without what needs to be there. But I will tell you, like, my turning point for where I was like, I need to support women, because I don't know if maybe I was the biggest supporter of women in my younger days. I was probably very competitive and very sales driven. And I, worked in an industry where it was all about numbers and stats and reports. And, you always had to try to be the best. But I had 2 very close friends that both of their husbands passed away when my kids were probably 8 years old at the time. And seeing what they went through, losing their husbands and being on their own, it was a complete life changer for me. And I will say that, I really I go so far out of my way to help them, because they have taught me so much as to how supportive they were of me always through my career. And, at that point I was like, wow, this is like where you say life's really short and you have to take a step back and say, you know what, I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to support you and support other women just like you. But it was a huge changer in my life to be a more compassionate person.
So I know we've talked about lots of different things today. The one thing I did want to just touch on briefly is I think that as working professionals, that there are a lot of assumptions out there about women, and one of my favorites is that, like, we're too emotional, which could be argued isn't necessarily a bad thing. What are some of those stereotypes or stigmas that we are currently experiencing that we maybe want to try and collectively move away from or change, or maybe just change the perception of okay, maybe emotional isn't such a bad thing. Like, maybe I have more emotional intelligence, so I can realize that someone isn't quite who they say they're going to be, or I don't know. How can we use certain things that have been stereotypes in the past as an advantage, and maybe just like talk about some of those that have been?
I was talking to Liz earlier about this because I struggle with being vulnerable at work and having those emotions, because to me, it's like, to be a strong leader, you have to be a badass, and nothing phases me. I got this. I'm professional. So for me, it's hard to embrace those emotions, and especially like as a manager too, to be compassionate for others and let them see me be weak is something that I really struggle with. And I think it's something that has just always been instilled: be strong. Don't cry like a girl, or you throw like a girl, all of those stigmas that you hear. So I've always been kind of conditioned to, well, keep it together, act professional, don't show emotion. And that's how maybe you'll be respected in the workplace. So for me, it's something that I'm still kind of going through and embracing, showing who you are, being vulnerable, being empathetic. And a lot of it's also mentioned in book Radical Candor, of really being a human and treating others as humans first. And as a manager, being able to embrace people for who they are and cut them slack when they need it, because you spend all this time at work and with the people you work with, and it's only going to improve their work, as Kerri mentioned, when people are happy and they feel valued. And I just think that's a huge part of it, of being human and accepting people for maybe what I want to say is a weakness, but maybe it isn't a weakness. I'm still trying to retrain my brain on that. But I think it's a struggle and something that's you're kind of conditioned to think.
Yeah, because when it comes down to it, that's always been viewed as a weakness, but it really makes you, especially as a manager, makes you more relatable, makes you more real. It makes you a person to your employees and your coworkers, because I think it's definitely a stigma when you look at people and you think they've got it all together. Look at her. She's got it all together. And then that person is striving to have it all together. And it's unattainable, because truth is, we don't. It's especially with social media and stuff. I think that's become even worse. So I think you can be emotional and probably more improve the relationship with your coworkers, your employees and stuff, as long as it's controlled. And I think, to your point, yes, I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses that's been geared towards. That's a woman's weakness that really is truly, I think, an advantage.
Yeah, we're not all crying in our offices. So I think, like people seem to think. No, I think that, like Becca was saying, there was a time when that was a manager's role. You're stoic. You don't show emotion. You make decisions based on thought and nothing else. You don't, the employees' names. Exactly. And I think that's changing. And I don't think in the future we're going to see as much of that. It's going to be far more personal. It's going to be knowing who people are, knowing who their children are, knowing, what they enjoy doing. I think those things are going to become far more important to be a good manager. But it's something that I think that I struggle with as well, because I do tend to look at the person and I'm like, I need to know more about you, and we need to develop this great relationship, and I want to make you laugh and I want to make you happy and all of these wonderful things. But at the same time, in a manager's position, I feel like history tells me I shouldn't be doing those things. So
I feel like we're on opposite spectrums there. Like for me, sometimes I get annoyed and I'm like, we use the term belly rub. Like, this person needs a lot of belly rubs, and they just need to they need to vent to me all the time about their personal problems. And I have found myself being a bad manager, not empathetic, saying, we're here to get work done. Like, I don't really care about your personal life. And that is such, I've caught myself, especially in the last year, just, I really need to retrain that mind thought, because the way that I've been managed hasn't been that way. So I've always been given, a lot of personal investment in making sure that I'm okay personally, and that has improved my work life. So why am I not carrying that along to my employees? But I feel like Melissa's the total opposite spectrum, where she's like, tell me more about that.
But I think acceptance is the first step. You accept that you see yourself doing that. I did that a lot when I was a young manager. I was like, nope, the schedule says you're here till 7. You're going to be here till 7 o'clock. And I was a mean manager when I first started. And not mean to the extent that.
But when you first started too, as it goes back, flexibility wasn't as much of an option anywhere, and now it is. So that helps.
And I'll tell you, being further along in my career, I find the most rewarding part of my career is going back and helping people and teaching people how to do things and being able to give back. I think that's probably the best part. And I think that as a mom, a lot of men don't have that ability to nurture. So even though there's a lot of negative things that are said about women, I think that we also have a lot of positive attributes that we do provide in the workplace. I think everything has to be taken, because I don't want to hear your whole life story. I would have salesmen come up and try to tell. I'm like, look, I don't want to hear it. We have to sell 5 cars today. When you're done selling your car today, you can come up and tell me all the stories you want. Go get to work. So I'm not the person that wants to sit there and listen to every drop. But I think that, when something significant happens in someone's life, you have to be there for them.
I think part of that too, one thing that I've taken some seminars on, courses, it's always stuck with me, is when we were little, we were taught, treat everybody how you want to be treated. But that's not true, because you don't want to be treated probably how I want to be treated. And I think that falls into women as well. And we think with our hearts, and so as you're probably not a big sharer, or you don't need to share things with people to help keep them motivated. But that employee that was telling you those stories needed that at that moment to probably go do his best job that day, to sell those 5 cars. And in the mind frame of she didn't even want to listen to what I had to say.
That's why you have a wife at home.
That's not So I think, and probably one of the downfalls is women think with their hearts, not their heads. And
I think that's kind of new territory, right? I think that, so, with all of this, equality talk, since, the suffrage movement and all of that, it's basically oh yeah, let's try to be more male-like almost, you know, like let's try to match whatever they have done, because clearly that's how they've moved up the corporate ladder, or that's how it's worked for them. But I think it's almost like we have to start defining these new roles, and then also, you know, as we move into more executive leadership positions, just really trying to make sure that those types of qualities are, you know, celebrated and not, you know, pushed, you know, hindered in a way. And, you know, like these new leaders and roles are starting to emerge. So I don't think it's like, none of us, I don't think at this table want to be like, oh yeah, I want to be just like XYZ, some manager that we had 10 years ago. I mean, no, we're like, this is new territory. We're pioneering like something completely different, because we don't want that for the future. You know, we want to do something like a hybrid almost of what that looked like. So, okay. So I think that we've had a lot of great discussion today. I want everybody to kind of maybe just go around and talk a little bit about, and I think you guys might have touched on it in the beginning, but I think this is a really important question, and I think it's good to reflect a little bit on kind of our past experiences, but then also look towards the future. So like, if there was one thing that you could go back to your younger self and tell your younger self, what would it be? And you know, knowing everything that you know now, is there something that you feel is worth sharing? Becca, you're not, you know, super old to reflect. 5 years of reflection.
I know.
Yeah.
So much has changed, but so much has changed. You go ahead, Tanya.
I think it's figure out who you are and never be apologetic for it, and be confident in who you are. And I think that is going to help you in the long run. But never apologize for who you are. Be strong, be confident, and don't sit back and let somebody else take lead because you think they're better than you. I always tell my kids in their team sports, when they're pitching or when they're whatever, like, nobody's better than you. Nobody. And that some people took that as a big like, what? But that's true. When they're out there pitching, not one other person is any better than they are. And I think we need to tell that to ourselves too. Nobody's better than me. I can do what they can do. I am who I am, and move forward with that. Be strong and know who you are.
Yeah, I think that just like Tanya said, it's all about being confident, knowing who you are. No one is perfect. People make mistakes. Everyone does, even people who don't look like they ever make a mistake. And it's okay. And don't be hard on yourself. You know, surround yourself with people who are going to support you, or who are going to give you the ability to, you know, kind of live out some of those dreams that you have, and support you along the way. But most of all, just don't be so hard on yourself. And I have to tell myself that a lot. I think we all do. And, you know, when you're younger, you're so self-conscious of everything that happens. And it's usually the things that aren't that important. So, yeah. And I think I'm still learning a lot of those things.
I think probably as a younger person, I think defining what your why is initially is probably the most important thing. And I think that maybe your why evolves over time, but I think always keeping, like, I have a certain quote and I keep that quote in my phone, I keep it in my book, and I always look at it as like a reminder, like, this is what my why is. And I think that if you consistently surround yourself with positive people that are moving in the same direction that you're moving in, doesn't matter if they're from the same background, but they, you know, the more diverse, the better. I think that if you focus on your why, you get rid of all the bottom feeders and the negative Nancy's, whether they're women or men, and you truly focus on that. As a younger person, I wish I would have utilized that advice more often.
Yeah, I think similarly for me, I would go back and say, you absolutely do not need anyone else's approval.
Yes.
Period. Like, you don't need a manager's approval. You don't need even your parents. At a certain point, stop trying to
please other
people or like do what you think other people want you to do. Like figure out what that is, your why, like, you know, as soon as you can. And like you said, it's an evolutionary process. It may not look like the same exact thing a year from now, but and I'm still, to Melissa's point, like doing the same thing. But you know, really the only person's approval that you need is your own. That's kind of the bottom line.
For me, I feel like I'm almost on the flip side, where I've always had a lot of confidence. I've always been sure of myself in the way that I was raised. Fortunate enough to get a lot of just confidence from being brought up. And for me, it was almost like, okay, make sure you find that smooth balance of not caring about what people think and being true to who you are, but then also being professional, being respectful to other people, and sometimes having to reel that back. I think as I've grown up and gone through more of a professional career, it's really important to find that balance of standing your ground, especially if someone's being disrespectful to you, but also being professional. And for me, the biggest validation there was when I was questioning it is having a corporation, executives and colleagues that back you on your decision. So like an example I'm thinking of is I was presenting to a large group of all men. They were agents. They were all 20 years older than me. And there was a point in the conversation where someone made a go make me a sandwich joke. And for me, the way my personality is and my character is, I'm just going to rebuttal with a sarcastic remark that that's not okay. I'm dismissing that comment. I'm not going to stand for that. And once I said that, that was just kind of reflex for me. But there was a piece of me saying, oh, I hope that's okay. I hope I'm not going to disrespect this client, and I hope I'm still being professional. And the biggest validation for me was having a company and other colleagues that stood behind me to say, no, that's not going to be tolerated. So I feel like I'm kind of on the other side of the coin of having to reel that back. But with the right, like you said, with the right support group and people around you that have your best interest at heart and that are supporting you in the right ways, and sometimes keeping me in check, which is what I need sometimes. I think that's how you can be successful and grow.
Okay, so I think we've all shared a lot today. Feeling a little bit closer to each one of you. We might need a group hug. Although, you know, with the state of the viruses going around, we're going to forgo that. We're going to forgo that group hug.
We'll send digital hugs.
Yes, digital hugs all around and high fives. So thank you all for joining us today. And I think this was great. And I think we shouldn't just do this in celebration of Women's History Month or International Women's Day. I think, you know, we need to actively mentor and keep the conversation going every single day. Because I know that there's highs and lows, and some weeks, like we all said, that we've got it all together, or seemingly thinking that we do. And then there's those times where we need each other to pick each other up. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your week.